Hey guys, Turk here. I hope you're having a good one. I told you this video was going to have a quick turnaround time, and today we're going to be dissecting all of the different quality settings, and I'll be giving you my optimized settings to improve your performance as much as you can. Now, as you've seen on the internet, this game is extremely tough to play, and if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go watch my Starfield PC performance review. That video's almost got 25,000 views, and y'all have already surpassed my engagement goals. So I'm going to be doing a huge CPU and GPU roundup in the coming week, and it's going to take me a little bit of time. So make sure you hit subscribe and hit the bell icon here on the channel. That way you won't miss when that video drops. But I'm getting carried away. Let's talk about quality settings and how much performance you can get from Starfield. So for a baseline, let's see how each of these presets performs without FSR engaged. I'm going to be using my Xbox Series X build for optimization here, so rewind the video to the hardware discussion for some more details about that setup. At 1080p, we hit 65 FPS on average at low, though our 1% lows are less than stellar since we are CPU limited. Bumping quality to medium costs us about 14% in performance, but it is a stark improvement in both lighting and shadow quality. Turning up to high costs us 4 additional frames on average, but it also adds 4 frames worth of extra immersion in the process. Last, Ultra costs us an additional 6 FPS on top, but we still manage to maintain a locked 30 FPS experience. Love it or hate it, guys, this hardware configuration looks really good. 1440p is a similar story, but it scales much better with the GPU load. From low to medium, we only lose about 7 FPS on average, and medium to high, we lose an additional 7 FPS on top of that. Ultra is still entirely playable with this configuration, though 1% lows might be less than ideal. 4K starts to get a bit questionable in the grand scheme of things, but it's worth a try if you want to engage dynamic resolution scaling. Low is tolerable at 36 FPS with slight dips to 29. Medium is barely passable. With high and ultra, they're just too much for the 6700 XT. 4K is a tough resolution to crack, so what kind of performance can we get back by turning on FSR 2? I reached out to Pure Dark to see if he had his DLSS mod ready for a day one video, but I am still waiting to hear back from him. Stay tuned to the channel to see how DLSS compares to FSR 2 in this game. Now, FSR 2, or Fidelity FX Super Resolution, it works differently in Starfield than in most standard implementations. Typically, games enable different FSR presets like quality, balanced, and performance mode, translating to various scaling factors of your output resolution. In Starfield, the developers just give us control of the scaling factor by giving us access to a scaling multiplier. I'm going to be using 4K as my output resolution and scaling down in 10% increments. So at a setting of 90%, I'm effectively rendering the game at 1944p. 80% is 1728p, and 60% is 1296p. 1296p. That sounds precisely like what Digital Foundry saw in their video. As expected, our 6700 XT is very GPU limited, and we see linear scaling moving from 4K to 1080p render resolution. Moving from 4K to 90% scaling gets us an additional 3 FPS on average. 4K to 80% gets us 19% more frames, and dialing back to 70% is a 33% performance improvement, and it's within striking distance of a locked 30 FPS experience. 60% gets us above our threshold, but we start seeing a bit more blurriness, and artifacts in the image are much more prevalent. And upscaling from 1080p, it gets us an impressive 67% performance improvement, but it is a bit blurry for my taste. In my previous experience, FSR 2 at quality mode is my ideal setting, which aligns with our 70% scale at 1512p. Balanced has been tolerable in most instances, and lo and behold, that lines up perfectly with 60%. Performance mode is less than ideal, but it's available if you have the blur tolerance, which aligns with the 50% setting. All in all, my recommended FSR setting will be a 70% resolution scaling, but pick whatever looks and feels best for you. So if you skipped ahead to this point of the video and you're looking for the quick and dirty settings in order to get back in your ship and flying in the frontier, here's what I've got. I'll be using the high preset. In most instances, it's only a few FPS slower than medium, And given our lower FPS target, I'll always favor better visuals. Next, use FSR2 with a scaling factor of 70%. I don't recommend going below 60% in most cases, as this lines up in most instances with FSR's balanced mode. Last, find a way to cap your frame rate. Consistency is critical in a game like this, and unfortunately, the game has no half VSync option. For me, I used AMD's Radeon Chill, and I set that to 30 FPS. NVIDIA also has an option to cap frame rate, but I'm not exactly sure what that setting is called. And if all else fails, hop into Riva Statistics Tuner and you can limit the frame rate there. If you can manage frame rates that are higher than 60 FPS, feel free to ignore this step because you're already in a good spot. Now let's optimize. As I said earlier, many options are very similar to our preset comparison. I found that the high quality setting looks outstanding, so I'm going to be using that as my preset and baseline for testing. For settings like particle quality, contact shadows, crowd density, and indirect lighting, I didn't really see any obvious impact in performance between the different modes. So for those, I'm going to be keeping those at the high setting. Now, for starters, let's talk shadows. At low, many shadows look incredibly soft, which may or may not look good for some people. Moving up to medium improves the clarity of the shadow. It also helps keep some of the thinner object shadows more intact, as you can see from the spiraling monument in the clip here. Increasing shadows up to high improves the clarity even further, and it makes the shadows even more pronounced on the wall. This does cost us an additional 2 frames, or 6%, which at 30 FPS can be a sizable cost. And of course, Ultra improves the shadow's resolution, but it costs an additional 2 FPS from high. I see medium as a good enough option with minimal impacts on performance, so that's going to be my recommended setting. The grass quality setting impacts the density of grass in views and its render distance. In these up-close shots, it's obvious how moving from low to ultra increases the quantity and the quality of the grass on the planet Aquila. With effectively no performance impact, you'd think we could just stay at high, right? Nope, not at all. As we move to a wider shot and we get a little bit more distance and scenery, the low setting drastically impacts how far we observe the grass. Medium is a sizable bump, though it doesn't render off into the mid-distance. High starts to get towards the larger rocks in the distance, but it costs us an additional frame of performance. Ultra fills in a lot of the gaps, even at distance, but it costs us 2 additional FPS compared to medium. As always, it's a bit of a toss-up between high and medium, but medium is good enough for me. Volumetric quality is another one of those settings that's difficult to pinpoint, but can subtly impact performance. Here with the fog at our feet, bumping the quality from low to ultra drops 3 FPS, a little bit less than 10%, and it doesn't really drastically impact our visuals. Medium only costs us a frame or 2, but it looks marginally better than low. Reflections, on the other hand, those are really noticeable. At low, the intensity of the reflected light is subdued, and the reflected image isn't as clear as it could be. Medium is a noticeable improvement, with much more of the light being reflected and obscuring the item that's in the case. High improves the reflections even further, though that improvement isn't worth the additional frame of performance in this scene. And honestly, I didn't really notice this wall at first when I was shooting the pirates in this party den. Medium gets the nod here. The last setting to tweak is ambient occlusion. By default, the game does a decent job at the low setting, and going up to medium adds a bit of extra definition on the edges between the objects. The high setting increases that ambience even more, while ultra costs us 2 to 3 more FPS in performance. Though the difference is subtle, I recommend high here, but feel free to drop this to medium if you need the additional frame. With these tweaks, Starfield can run about 11% faster than the high-quality preset, yet look better than the medium preset. Combine this with an appropriate level of FSR, and you can easily bump an underperforming platform up to a stable target frame rate. But as I said in the hardware portion, you can't expect magic and boost your performance up to 60 FPS. These past 10 hours of game time have been a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, the game performs light years better than other Bethesda launches, which is a huge praise for the developer. On the other hand, PC gamers, myself included, might feel underwhelmed with such a steep cost to get us to 60 FPS. even for mid-range hardware in 2023. With any luck, future updates, mods, and the inclusion of DLSS 2 or DLSS 3, FSR 3, and other technologies will make this game a classic, just like Bethesda's previous releases. But guys, that's all I got to say about my Starfield recommended settings for day one. Now, a word for my handheld viewers. I haven't forgotten about you guys. As of the time of this recording, I just couldn't get the game running stably on my Steam Deck. I've tried Bleeding Edge Proton, I've updated my firmware, nothing's really getting it locked. I've been working with Plagman on the side, so I promise that content is coming. As for Windows handheld users, the performance could be better. I'm waiting for the Ally and better 6800U drivers in order to do a thorough handheld review of this game. So stick tight to the channel, you guys know it's going to be coming. As always, you can catch me over on Twitter @TheTurk, and I appreciate you guys sticking to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.